Market Basket employees continued their protest today, even though they now risk losing their jobs. Last week, the company's new co-CEOs set a deadline for employees to return to work this morning or face termination. Despite the ultimatum, this was the scene outside the company's Tewksbury headquarters. Hundreds of workers demanding the reinstatement of Arthur T. Demoulas, affectionately known as ATD. Now, Market Basket is moving forward with its threat to replace thousands of absent workers. It held a job fair this afternoon for current employees looking for more senior positions. But protesters say they're holding firm.
I'm nervous, but I'm determined. We're going to stay behind RDT. This company will not run the same without him.
If things don't go for Arthur T, I think the company's just going to get out because no one's going to shop at the stores.
Arthur T comes back, he jumps back on board, he brings in his management team. You see all these people go right back to work and we get the business up and running again.
And one noteworthy aspect of this saga is that none of Market Basket's 25,000 employees are unionized. And that doesn't necessarily leave them without legal protections, though. For more on that, I'm joined by Peter Moser. He's a labor attorney at the firm of Hirsch, Roberts, Weinstein, and has represented both corporate and employee interests. Welcome to Greater Boston.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the attorneys general for both New Hampshire and Massachusetts have warned Market Basket that these employees have rights, but as I just mentioned, they're not unionized. So what kind of protection do they have?
It's a great question, and the short answer is the attorneys general are focused on wage and hour issues, which is going to be, small comfort to folks who might be losing their jobs. If there are protections, one would want to look to the federal law, the National Labor Relations Act, and that's not within the bailiwick of either of the attorneys general. So when you actually read those letters from the joint letter from the attorneys general, it's pretty weak stuff. So if the employees were looking for some protection, you would think it would fall under the labor law, the National Labor Relations Act. And it's irrespective of whether they're unionized. That law protects employees who belong to unions and employees who don't. A lot of people don't appreciate that distinction.
So when you see the way that Market Basket is proceeding right now with the job fair, which by accounts, at least for early afternoon, it seems, or late afternoon when the job fair started, it seems not a lot of people are showing up for the current employees. How careful do you think that Market Basket is being and adhering to what they're being advised?
I think they're being pretty careful on the labor front, and a lot of people aren't noticing because these terms of art, unless you're a labor law geek, you wouldn't pick up on. Even in our introduction, we use the words interchangeably, replaced and termination, and they're two very different concepts within the labor law. So if you read what actually is coming out of Market Basket, at least to the extent I've been able to see it, they don't use the word termination for the frontline folks, for what I would call the rank and file folks. A supervisor, a couple of, I think 8 supervisors have in fact been terminated, that's my understanding, but not the rank and file employees. And when they talked about a deadline of Monday today for those rank and file employees, what Market Basket's written word said was, we may have to replace you. Not fire, but replace. Well,
and that's what I wonder too, is with the status of these employees really ambiguous at this point because we don't know what's going to happen as both sides have this tete-a-tete. How can they be doing new hiring?
Yeah, there's the legal end of it and then there's the practical end of it. Legally, they would be entitled, well, it starts with this. If what the employees are doing is protected, and that's a big if, but let's assume for a moment that this is a protected job action, then Market Basket would be legally entitled to continue to run its business to hire replacement workers. In this case, permanent as opposed to temporary replacement workers. So that's the legal end of it. As a practical end, are they going to be able to find those workers? Maybe not. That's a whole different story.
Well, it seems with the way things are ginning up at this point, it's going to be a little bit more rancorous from here on out. I want to bring in Thomas Cohan. He's co-director, I should say, of the Institute for Work and Employment Research at MIT's Sloan School of Management. So how does Market Basket at this point distinguish between employees who are not showing up at work and employees who might be too intimidated? Especially we hear that a few people who actually did show up for this job fair today were booed, they were called names, disparaging names. So how does Market Basket determine who's under threat and who's just not showing up for work?
Well, there's really no practical way to do that. They don't have the information for what the intent of an employee is. All they can see is who's there and who's not there. But as a practical matter, if no one is showing up or very small numbers are showing up, this strategy simply is not going to work, and they're going to have to find an accommodation that the employees support because the customers won't come back until the employees come back, and the employees have made it very clear they won't come back unless there is at least an interim arrangement for RDT to manage and lead the operations. You can possibly see a scenario where they accept RDT's proposal that he lead the recovery process and the restocking process and bringing the customers back while they work out the final details of a deal for him to take over.
Now, what happens at this point when you have this level of rancor, when you have people who are being threatened when they show up at a job fair? Market Basket sent out an email this morning, saying that any employee who was too afraid to show up to the job fair could apply for a job through this email. You don't know if they're trying to start this conversation that perhaps people are sitting at home thinking, oh, well, maybe other people are just emailing rather than showing up. I mean, when you have all of this emotion rising and now paychecks may be stopping, what happens at this point?
This conflict is just escalating, and it's escalating in a way that leads to very unpredictable results. It's in no one's interest to let this continue to ferment and to get out of hand. Right now, there's been no violence, there's been peaceful, civil, disobedient kinds of behavior, but the pressures on everyone are growing. And so I think it's in everyone's interest to get this resolved now. There's no way that you can have a division between people who do come back and people who are staying out and then eventually come back. That will destroy the value of the business. The value of this business lies in this cohesive group of employees who have great relationships with customers because they are motivated to provide high quality customer service. If you give up that value, the company is worthless.
Yeah, Peter, have you seen another example where the employees seem to hold this much power? And of course, this is my editorial view that the employees do seem to have the control of the stick here. Is that the case?
There are some unique aspects to this situation. One of them, I think, is the purity of this movement. It truly is what every organized labor group would love to see among their own membership. I mean, it seems to be complete among the ranks. It seems to be genuine. It seems to be heartfelt. It's picked up by the customers as well as the employees. It's a rare thing. It's almost unique when you factor in that they're doing it in support of their CEO. The one thing I would like to add by way of perspective, though, is when people look at this situation, the knee-jerk reaction in this country is to assume that something's broken, that this isn't working, something's falling apart, and this is a bad thing. When the reality is, this is probably an example of the system working. I mean, the way the law is set up is so that there's an even playing field between management and labor. And this is labor's tool to go on strike, to withhold labor. And what the law did back in 1935 was to say, this is the way we want it to be. Back in bad old days, before 1935, these disputes were settled with violence and state court action, and this is the way both sides are supposed to be exercising their
But
powers.
Peter, on the legal issue, a large number of these employees are excluded from the law because they're supervisory and managerial employees. And that's where I think the law fails. It fails in lots of areas, as I think we would both agree. But in this area, why should employees who are supervisors not have the same protection to protest when they feel that their jobs and the business that they help build is in jeopardy? They should have the same rights as the hourly and non-supervisory employees who are protected, just as you said.
It's a great point. I mean, if there were two areas where one could argue that the law would fail folks or is broken or is in need of change, that would probably be one of them. I mean, I think there's an answer to that question, which is when the law was enacted, 1935, there was a clear division between management and labor, and you were one of the other.
Well, I want to quickly ask you, I've been really surprised that other supermarkets in this area haven't really stepped in to take advantage of what's happening right now, either through signage in their stores or just in general customer relations. Is this a moment for other supermarkets to try to scoop in while Market Basket is weak?
I think they have to be very cautious. They're getting the customers because the customers have nowhere else to go, or they have to go to one of the stores, and so they're benefiting from it and they're taking advantage of it through the customers' actions. But if they start marketing, come here, we'll take care of you, we welcome Market Basket customers and so on, there'll be a backlash because these customers want to continue to be loyal to Market Basket, but they're now acting in a different practical way. But I think there's a fine line between accepting the customers, welcoming them, giving them good service, and trying to market them as an alternative.
Well, we just continue to wait and see in what should be a very eventful week for Market Basket employees and customers. Peter Moser, Thomas Gohan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jerry.